What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the MIDCONVO podcast. We have a guest episode today. We have here with us Nicole Shapiro. She is a cinematographer, producer.
Based out of Toronto. And what's the nickname?
People call me Shaps.
Oh, we're about to get in a little bit about your story, what it's like being a producer and cinematographer here. And then also we're going to talk about money. Come on, money bags. We all love talking about money on the MIDCONVO. But first, let's roll that intro music. Yo, first things first. Thanks for being on the pod.
Thank you for
We
having
came
me.
all the way to Toronto. You were on our list of guests. And I think what gets me the most excited is that you've kind of worn multiple hats in the industry, just getting to know you a little bit. And I think it would be cool for our audience to hear who is Nicole? Like right now in this season, what do you do? Like, how do you explain to a client, what your roles are?
I primarily am a cinematographer. That's kind of what I want to do long term. That's where I get the most excited. Like that's where I'm most passionate. I'm like, you frame a shot and it's like, yes, like you just get the feeling. It's inexplainable. I will never get that feeling with producing. It's all logistics and budget. But cinematography is the number one bucket. The second bucket is producing. And that's usually when I feel like my skill set or the scope of the project is out of what I'm capable of, or at least what I would like someone else to do. I know someone can do it better, and I'll just take the backseat and produce and get the people together that I know work well and do the budgeting and all the admin stuff. And then the third bucket is socials, which I got into probably a year ago with TikTok and now the Instagram reels and that kind of stuff. Some little bit of YouTube because Kofi's in my ear. Shout out to Kofi Yaboa. He's always like, you should start. But yeah, those are my three main things that I do.
That's awesome.
That's sweet. I think it's crazy because a lot of people who are listening to the podcast who are creatives, maybe they're currently doing or aspiring, they hear someone like yourself with producing, cinematography, social. They're like, man, Nicole's probably been doing this
You probably went to film
since
school.
high school. She'd probably been doing this since she was young, and it's late for me. Or maybe she has a lot of experience under her belt. But off the mic, before this, when we were connecting, you were saying that you have a degree in kinesiology.
Yeah.
Okay. I was so nervous about getting that wrong. Kinesiology, right?
Yeah. It's a study of human movement. So yeah.
So good.
If you wanted to be a physiotherapist or strength and conditioning coach, that's what you do. Yeah. Chiro.
Which is so cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you pivoted from doing that and going to school for it, getting a degree in that, pivoting to holding a camera and getting into the film industry.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that transition? How do you go from doing sports and kinesiology into holding a camera and being on a film set?
Yeah, for sure. Essentially, when I was in fourth year, I was doing a little bit of both. I always had a camera in my hand. It was always something even my dad, he's always got the VHS camera at family dinners and all that. It was always ingrained. My mom liked photography, so it was within the family. And I didn't actually know that I could make money with it though. That was the differentiating factor. So when I graduated, I did 2 internships at the same time to try to figure it out. It was actually around here. It was literally right across the street, called Beautiful Life Studios, a wedding company. So they did wedding photo and video. And then I did an internship at a strength and conditioning place. So I was doing both and making myself choose, and also just listening to myself and how I feel and in what environment I like better. And even when I was in the gym, I was like, oh, that could be a sick angle. And I'm like, wait, no, sorry, gate 12, 13. Or I'm counting the refs for them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of how I split off. That was a pivoting moment. And yeah, the wedding stuff was where I learned the videography side of it, of event capture, audio. They taught me a lot. And yeah, then after that, I had a couple smaller agencies where I would do videos for small businesses, and again the videography side of it. And I think over the years I just watched a lot of my peers also get bigger budgets and starting to manage bigger teams, and I also started to understand the hierarchy of what a crew actually looks like, and realizing that when you start doing the math, I remember I had this note in my phone that was if I did 20 weddings times this amount And, you know, some like wedding season is only this long, so I would only make this amount of money. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm reaching a ceiling cap already. How do I like expand that?
It's well said.
Yeah, so it's that I just remember that feeling a little stuck, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be another way to like branch out. Maybe I'm like managing other weddings or something, but I didn't know that that was producing. Like I just thought that, oh, maybe I can, you know, finesse something, I don't know, that way. But yeah, then COVID hit, lost all my weddings, and was like never doing weddings again, and pivoted to commercial stuff. So yeah, I'm grateful for that pivot because yeah, it was tricky because yeah, when you
Wow.
lose like 20 weddings, it's like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, there goes my
COVID
income.
was crazy
Would
for
you
weddings.
say
Yeah.
then you kind of got your first hands-on experience then with weddings? That's what got you into production?
Pretty much, yeah. My first wedding ever was my cousin's. I shot it on my mom's Canon T5i and an iPhone.
Come on.
And yep, and it
That
was just
Canon,
for fun.
though, everyone got that Canon.
Yeah.
It's so funny because that's a
Yeah.
common like thing that you see people start on the Canon.
Yeah,
It's not like Nikon or
yeah.
on the other ones.
You just start with photo,
no
really.
shade.
I
We don't have
guess,
to.
right?
We don't have to throw shade at Nikon. They just bought red. Okay, so we gotta
Yeah,
be careful now.
yeah. They have some leverage.
Yeah, they
now.
got some leverage.
Yeah.
I want to zone in a little bit on. You said internships,
Mhm.
and you started. You like had 2 internships.
Yeah.
Like why did you? Is there a reason why you wanted to do both, and not just pick away and then go all in? And what advice do you have for someone who maybe is looking to make a pivot? Like, where do you even get an internship? How do you start one? Like,
Yeah.
is it worth it? Where
Yeah,
should
yeah.
you start if you're trying to make a pivot or you're kind of in between fields?
I kind of owe it to my parents in that regard because they were very supportive in me doing both, and it's okay if one doesn't work out, like not putting all your eggs in one basket at a time. Because yeah, if one doesn't work out, then I kind of either have to fully start over. But I think it wasn't really like a intentional decision to do both. Like I was already lined up to do strength and conditioning, and then I saw on Indeed, like any job posting boards, but that's where I found it, Indeed. I saw the wedding one and I was like, you know what? It's not like every single day of the week I can do both. So maybe I just try to do both. And yeah, on top of however many part-time jobs that I had at the time, like working at Loblaws, I was like working at Budweiser Stage and
No way.
I was like selling merch, which was I loved
Hey,
that job.
come on.
It was so fun. But yeah, just, I don't know. I feel like I also get that from my dad. Like he's always worked like 2 or 3 jobs just because, you know, we just have, like from my family, we just have this desire to like want more. Like we just want to do more. We have better quality of life. Like just, you know. So anyway, that was, I guess, the background reason as to why I was doing multiple things and not just choosing one. But I think internships are like so crucial because if you're like myself and you did not go to film school, you have to learn somehow. And for that, it's free education in my eyes. Like it's not like I was working for free. I was learning for free. So
That's good.
yeah, there's definitely been times like I would say 2021-ish where like that pivot started to change into the commercial space where I was doing more of that hierarchical, bigger sets, and mistakes happen, you know? And it's like, could I have learned that in a non-client setting? Probably. Like, you know, like I'd encourage you to do, and I'm a big advocate for spec work where you do things for free. If anyone doesn't know what spec work is, it's just like passion projects, right? Like you just develop an idea, gather your friends, whoever's in the industry, and like execute on an idea with no client input. Like you have all creative control, and that's, I think, where you learn the most. Is very, very much like an internship where you are working for a company, but you're learning from other people that know more than you. So
So good. What I love about, I just want to call out your passion and like your voice in the industry is you really like you have the DNA of an entrepreneur. It's like work ethic. You've tested the waters, proof of concept. I think entrepreneurs too, they kind of calculate like, all right, how do I not run into being capped and hit a ceiling? And I think that's ultimately like what I want to get to with how much I love your story is you were willing to do whatever it took to figure out like what your path was. And I think sometimes people just think, oh, you know, she went from weddings to this to this. And it's cool to hear that you were like, no, I'm actually going to make sure that I really get a good idea for like, weddings, which is high pressure, high stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot
Long
of freelancers
hours.
that we meet, a lot of freelancers that we meet, they come from that. They come from portraits and weddings. And then they're like, nah, I want to work with brands, or hey, I want to work on commercials.
True.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to hear that that's kind of propelled you into entrepreneurship. And you've been able to now kind of be the cinematographer and also producer.
Mm-hmm. And I think along with the pivot and actually like doing the actions, that's like 50% of it. And I also think the other 50% is like your identity. And I talk a lot about this, like even just with my own friends. And I'll bring it back to like a personal topic in terms of identity. 2018, I stopped drinking, and it was just out of choice. Like it wasn't like nothing crazy happened. I just figured like, oh, I don't really need it. I was also in kinesiology, so like they always tell you like it's a toxin. It's
This
bad
is
for
what
you.
it does to you.
Like it's bad. So anyway, I was like, great, I'll save money. I'll remember my keys at the end of the night. I can still have fun. Like, you know, so when I translate that into how I would introduce myself to people, initially I would say like, oh yeah, I'm not drinking tonight. And they'd be like, oh, come on, just have one, like cheers with me, whatever. But if I framed that in a different way and said like, oh, I don't drink, and just like assume that identity for like off the bat, they're like, oh, why? And like the response was totally different. And it was just like a little interesting like personal experiment where I was like, okay, if I can do that in any type of scenario, and I can just say like, yeah, I'm a cinematographer. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Like, show me what you've done.
Wow.
There's
cool.
no, like, nobody can really question it. And it's very different than like a doctor, a lawyer. You get a degree, you get your doctorate, like you are now officially in the community. Like
Yeah.
for all freelancers, it's very, like, it's up to you. You can call yourself a filmmaker, you call yourself a cinematographer, like call yourself whatever you want other people to perceive you as. And like that in itself is the pivot, is like making sure that you're identifying yourself first, like to yourself. You have to believe it yourself, or else nobody's gonna believe you if you're like, oh yeah, like I do cinematography, like you know, like
Yeah.
no one's gonna really
You're not-
take you seriously. So yeah, and I think that was another producing thing too, where on the cinematography side, you start saying, yeah, I do videography, and my parents are always like, yeah, she's a videographer, and I'm like, I won't even correct you, but it's like people understand that there is a difference.
Yeah.
And there are some jobs where I am a videographer. I'm just camera operating, you know, and then there's other times where I'm responsible for like 20 people. And so there's like, even within the level that I'm currently at, like your identity will shift. So it just depends, I don't know, like half on what you want to do and like the fake it till you make it, but then half like showing up with the receipts and saying like,
Wow.
look, this is like, I've done these things. This is why I'm calling myself a producer, or why I'm calling myself a cinematographer. So yeah, it's
I
a bunch
love
of fake
that.
it till you make it though, for sure.
I love that a lot, because it is so much of succeeding as a freelance creative is really about making it a reality
Mm-hmm.
into your mind first, and then obviously backing it up with receipts and backing it up with like technical skills and technical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that first step of believing that you are what you say you are is crucial.
Yeah.
That is so valuable.
There was
And
definitely a year where I was I was just like, yeah, like I want to be a cinematographer. Like I'm an aspiring cinematographer. And it's like, well, like what's setting me apart? Like why am I not there yet? So then that's where spec projects came in, and I was like doing big work, and for like fully self-funded or like funded with another director, we would like split costs. So that's where I could say, yeah, like I was a cinematographer in this case, and I just made like, you make the opportunity for yourself in that case. So yeah.
I was going to ask, was there a season where you were like, I'm a cinematographer, but I'm not as confident as I could be in it,
Yeah.
so I'm going to do these things in order to increase my confidence?
Yep, definitely. Yeah. I think this year, the year that I'm currently in, was the year where I was like, I want to do one spec project every single month, which is nuts. Like I don't know how I don't even know if I'm still doing it. I can't remember like how many, or because so many are in post-production, but yeah, it's kind of right now. Like
Wow.
yeah. So I feel like after this year I'll have like a good chunk where I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm much more confident. But I feel like we're always like that, you know, like, oh, next year
Yeah,
I'll be more
yeah, yeah.
confident, or, you know, like,
It's
so
always a work in progress.
it's always a work in progress.
And that's honestly a mark of, like Paul said, that's like very entrepreneurial. Like all entrepreneurs are very, it's always a work in progress. Like there's always something to build, something to fix,
Mhm.
something to do. Like it's
Yep.
never a point where you reach, oh, I'm here, I'm just gonna chill now. And
Yep.
you're probably either A, not building something meaningful enough, or B, you're not feeling fulfilled by like what you're building. Because if those two things are there, you're constantly in a building state.
Yep, exactly.
Because yeah, it's just that it's not always about the money either. It's just that internal like feeling of wanting to build.
Yep.
And I think that's totally normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go into I want to pivot a little bit out of the pivot part and go into the profit, which is the next section I would love to cover in this podcast episode. So you pivoted from obviously a totally unrelated industry or niche, which is kinesiology, into film production. And then now you have to figure out how to make money doing that. Because there's a lot of people who have desires to make pivots, but then they do it and they're like, crap, I can't actually make money doing this. So they go back to what's safe. Can you talk us through a little bit about, okay, what was like your first gig out of like the wedding industry, and what were those budgets like? And how did you continue to climb that budget range?
I think like maybe 3 steps. The first step was like, I guess in a very small sense, I would be doing the spec videography. So I do stuff for free, right? Everyone starts off just doing it for free. I think that I would be posting on Instagram, hashtagging whatever, Toronto videographer, Toronto something, like searchable words. Then that would get me connected with like very small agencies that had their own like little restaurant clients or things like that. And those budgets were maybe like $400 here, between like $300 and $500, I would say, like per day of shooting, or including an edit, you know, like it's just, you know, so, but at the time I was thinking to myself, I'm basing things off hourly rates, because it's like, you know, you're used to working at a part-time job, and
Yeah,
you're
like
like billing
$30 an
hourly.
hour.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I would like calculate it, I guess. And then I guess from there, it was just, I don't know, bigger. It's really just the spec stuff.
It's a
honestly.
snowball effect.
There's a snowball, yeah, because every time that you would post something, at least in my feed, or, you know, transitioning from like the videography event side into more of the commercial side, it was like, oh, okay, this like looks better because I brought on more people that like I don't want to learn how to color. Like, color houses can,
Someone's better, yeah.
you know, someone's better. So it's just like leveraging the people around me, and that will then bring in more money in that sense. But what I will say is a lot of people that are struggling right now with finances usually stick with one thing. If I said I was only a cinematographer, I would be struggling right now financially, for sure. Because you like to put all your eggs in one basket, you're hoping for a show, you're hoping for like a 3-month contract, right? Like, because if you're just doing that, you're doing some prep and then you shoot, and then you wait, and then you do some prep and then you shoot. Like, what are you doing in between? You have days of the week that you're not doing anything, like other than your own research or whatever, as a freelancer specifically. So that's kind of where the like social media side comes in a little bit, where the producing side comes in, because if I can at least make it known to other people that I have different roles, like you might know me as a producer, you might know me as a cinematographer. There's actually a funny story recently. We were pitching on a hockey commercial. I won't say the brand, but I had one person reach out to me and say, hey, we have this project. I really want you to DP this. And I was like, oh, great. So we like pitched the project with my name in the deck and everything. And then another company reached out saying, hey, we need a producer for this project.
Oh, that's
and because
funny.
it's sport related, they think, you know, they connect me with it. But it was interesting to see how both, like for the same job, I was not like, you know, put in the position of both roles. So it just depends on, you know, how again, back to identity, how other people are getting to know you. And it's a lot of word of mouth, at least in Toronto, for sure. Like people will put you on to different jobs for money. So
I kind of like this, how it went from spec work, which is you're literally spending money to build a portfolio, to getting gigs that are like $400. Sometimes you're not even getting fed on those shits because they're just like, yo, this is it.
Yeah. Here's a
And,
granola bar.
Yeah. To getting called in on these big projects that are often well over 5 figures.
Mhm.
And I think what's so cool is it's like the more spec work you do, the more people take you serious because it shows you're invested and that you're willing to go the extra mile, even if it's not paid.
Mhm.
And really, you were like building a name for yourself. So now, how many years have you been doing this?
5 since 2019.
Which, first of all, is crazy. I've been doing this for 11, and I meet people often that have been doing it for far more time than you have, and they're experiencing hurdles because maybe they haven't tested or gone the journey that you have, and what's worked for you might not work for them.
Mhm.
But I just want to shout out that, like, I think it goes to show the passion in it. Like, if you want to earn a profit, you got to have passion in it.
Mhm.
And a lot of people their growth is hindered because they're like, wait, you're telling me I got to spend money on a spec shoot? Hold up. Yes. We talked about on a previous episode, when it comes to portfolio work, you got to put out work that is going to attract the type of clients you want.
Mhm.
And if you're going to try to attract clients that are big budget, then you already bet the spec shoots better reflect that.
Yep.
And I've been able to see that in your portfolio, and I know Ed is too. And it's cool to see how all the dots connect.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you need proof of concept. If you go to any store and they're like, "Listen, I'll make you the best pair of socks." Like, "Okay, can you show me the socks?" No. But I promise.
Yeah,
You're not going to sell anything.
totally.
You know? You need those high quality socks.
Yo, that's a word. That's a word.
And you'll sell it.
That's a word for
About
the
to go get me
creatives,
some
though.
high-quality
That's a
socks.
word for the creatives that are getting on calls with potential clients,
Mhm.
and they have no work to show.
Yeah.
They're showing mood boards off Pinterest
Yeah.
when it's like, yo, what does your portfolio look like? It's under construction. Well, hold up. We're going to the next person.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the spec work, going into zoning in on that a little bit, even off the mic, when I first saw your like portfolio, that was new to me, you know, like there was one particular project that's on Nicole's feed. If you want to go check it out, it's like a spec piece for Bumble. The thing is though, when I saw that, it looked so like high end and so commercial that I didn't know it was spec work. She just told me this like off the mic before we started recording. But that's literally her. She's like proving what she's saying right now on the mic, because that's what made me want to bring her on the podcast, and like obviously all her other work as well. But all the stuff that she's done, maybe some spec, maybe some not. Regardless, the work spoke for itself. And I think that too many times creatives are waiting. They're waiting for that brand to like throw them the bone so that they can create those frames, create that lighting interior, use that camera. But honestly, so many of them could just go out and do it and then start to work with the brands.
Yeah.
So I think that was a cool little like side detail that I didn't know that was a spec piece. And then I found out it was, and I was like, dang, she really like put a lot into that.
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes. And I'm sure if I felt that way, I can't imagine how brands or clients or producers or agencies will feel seeing that on your account.
Yeah. You like speaking numbers too. Like I think both Sydney and I, the director, we both like EP'd, and Sydney was directing and I was DPing. I think we both put in like 1,200 maybe.
Nice.
So like, you know, like it's not like crazy, but we also like leverage a lot of relationships. Like anyone who was on that set, like I'm pretty sure we didn't pay anyone.
All the homies got together,
All the homies, yeah,
made a
like
spec piece happen.
yeah, it was like pay for food, pay for location, pay for like additional rentals that we couldn't get at the rental house that, you know, we work with often. Shout out Viva. I love Viva.
Hey.
But yeah, it's that investment, I know 100% will pay off, but you just have to be patient too, because it's not going to come right away. Nobody's going to like come and knock on your door like, oh, the Bumble thing, can we recreate that like tomorrow? Like it's
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
It's got to like live online. It's got to do its thing. It's got to like be sent to multiple people. And I think one thing that I've seen it was like a creative studio website for creatives listening who have that portfolio that's like in progress. This year, because I had so many spec projects, I made sure that each spec, and you can do this with paid projects too, you just have to get like permission from the client obviously, but making sure that you have behind the scenes and you show like how you were doing it. And I actually got hired off of a behind the scenes video that I posted because I asked the client, like usually when you first have a, introductory call, you ask, how did you find my page? And she's like, I found you through TikTok actually, because you're always like educating and you do these behind the scenes. And I was like, oh, but like I don't post any of my portfolio on TikTok. Like there's no final products. And she was like, it didn't really matter because I know that if you can teach it, like you're good enough to do it. Like if you're able to, like show other people how you're doing it, of course you're gonna know how to do it because you're teaching it. So that was an interesting client perspective coming from, and which usually doesn't happen because usually clients, they need to see it and they're like, oh, okay, this is what it can look like. But for her, it was more about like personality and like how, if she can
That's a
teach it.
master class right there on spec work.
Yeah.
Like how to leverage a spec shoot. You capture behind the scenes.
Yep.
I'm sure you created a bunch of content too that were like, maybe it's not the final like video, but there's like little clippets that you could put into TikToks and stuff. That's crazy.
That's so cool. Because honestly, that is so true. Because I've seen that happen in my own work as well. And I also think in addition to your point of, if you can teach it, then you probably know how to do it. I think showing the BTS of any creative, like you could be a graphic designer, a videographer, a freelance photographer, whatever the case may be, whatever field in the arts you're in, like there's a process to it.
Yeah.
And if you can show your process, it'll also show clients what they're paying for.
Yeah.
When a brand can see how far their money can go, it adds immediate value. Imagine just imagine this is an internal team here, us three, and we're going over some people on Instagram we found on how to spend this $25,000 budget. We have a couple DPs who all they have are some carousels of frames that they got. Then we have a third one where like they have that, but also the amount of work they put into that set, amount of the cameras they're using and all that.
Yep.
I would more likely be inclined to the person I've seen the process, because now we don't have to do a guessing game of like, man, are we actually overpaying for this? Like, what did they use to actually pull off this frame? If we see the BTS, then it's like we know exactly how far the money is going to go. And I think that is so valuable to see. So if you can show your process, like Nicole said, and anyone on the mic, like get those BTS, get those flicks.
Nicole, how many videos would you say on TikTok you have that are like that style, or just in general around like education and yourself?
All of them. Like I don't post any, I posted a couple portfolio videos, I guess, where it's actually the product and it tanks, like nobody cares. But it's like, hey, we did this thing and this is the camera, and then here's the final results. That's when like you get the viewership because you get the hook and everything. But yeah, so
the reason why I ask is because there's literally data that calls out that when people make purchasing decisions, their trust is earned after 7 like different touch points of conversation. And the fact that you go into discovery calls and they're already like, we know Nicole. We watch her TikTok videos.
Yeah.
Because on TikTok, once you watch one, you watch the next, the next, the next, the next. And what's so cool is people are always trying to figure out, how do you warm up, or how do you simply earn that trust outside of just your portfolio? Hold up. It's by putting out free pieces of content like that. And I just think a lot of people in this economy think that there's instant gratification with spec work. Let me tell you, sometimes it takes years to connect the dots between a client and a spec project. And it's cool to hear that you're able to do that.
Yeah. I think putting that kind of content on your website too is super key. Like with the way that I formatted my website currently, I just like updated it like a month ago or so. But you have like the project, and when you click into the project, I have like the number of crew that was on it, the number of like days that were shot, the number of locations, like data, and then
like a little case study.
Just case studies.
All right,
yeah.
now we're getting into the website masterclass.
Yeah.
We're about to run. That's crazy. That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of case studies with a bunch of, project breakdowns.
Yeah. And like a little blurb of like what they wanted, or like, just putting a bit more into it versus just like posting your frames.
All the pieces matter.
Like also it's not even like that's the right way though. Like there's so many people that like aren't even on socials, and they're like, they're vets. Like nobody knows them online. They don't even know that world, but they're so like, they're doing movies, they're doing shows, like they're busy, they have no time to do the social stuff. So it's just like a different, there's different routes. And because I didn't do the film school route, because I don't want to make movies, like I want to do commercials, I want to do like the social side, like you have to be in the world. You have to do the socials in order to like,
That's
you know what I
good.
mean? You have to be in the ecosystem to get it.
On that note, there's an interesting thing with socials that I learned from a homie of mine who's a DP. His name is Mason.
I was gonna say, give my guy a shout out,
Yeah,
Mason.
Mason
What's up,
Prendergast,
Mason?
dude, he's super talented, based out of LA. He works with like a ton of different people, but I found out that he was on a project for like Toyota or like the Supra when they were launching that. And what's crazy is that they had a team, so like this huge agency where like they're Toyota's deploying money to get like the commercial, get some cut downs, and then there was like a social team. Like the social team, they're supposed to shoot like social media content, like vertical content and all that stuff, but there's like a fat budget behind it. So it's just cool to see that even big household name brands, and of course you can go down the commercial route, but within that, if you're not quite, doing the crazy stuff yet, you can still get into that world by doing things like Instagram, TikTok, all those things. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of crazy because we're finally at a point where those two worlds are like definitely converging right now. And there's a chance to leverage like these social media platforms. It's always kind of typically been like film bros, film industry,
Yep.
and then there's like social media influencers, TikTokers. But honestly, there's a lot of crossover right now, I feel, in the especially branded content.
Bro,
I think-
UGC creators are making 6 figures now.
Yeah,
Easy.
it's wild.
And it's because the equipment is so like accessible now. You're getting like 10-bit footage in like a FX30.
Yep.
That's what, $2,000? Like, it's like, well, it's probably more than that, but I don't know how much.
I think FX. No, you're right.
It's around that.
Yeah, it's around there. The
So-
FX3
when
is
B&H
like
does a sale.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
When they're open.
Yeah, but with TikTok, like I initially started posting every day because I was like, I want free gear. Like, to be completely honest, like I was like, I need lights. I need like certain things that I don't really want to buy. Is there any way I can? I love the educating side too. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm like passionate about that and like sharing the process. But the end goal was like, yeah, like maybe I'll get some like free stuff out of this. And I think this was maybe 6 months into it. I had Cossette, who is like one of the biggest agencies in Canada, reach out, and they have McDonald's, and they're like, hey, McDonald's needs some TikTok creation. How's this for a budget? And I'm like, let me get back to you. One of those.
Acting like your plate just is full with them.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Sign me up.
So, like, shout out to Cossette. They're an incredible agency. They also have Google Pixel. Like, we've done some stuff for them. And it's like, the only reason why is because they see that I'm in the ecosystem of TikTok. They know that I can shoot on a phone, but they also know that I understand the hierarchy and like the systems of production. So it's like, they're
blending.
They're blending 100%.
So a question that we'd love to get into is pricing, budget, a little bit of behind the scenes, even more into the weeds than we have now.
Yeah.
What is, and honestly, if you don't feel comfortable naming like the specific brand name,
We'll crack it
that's totally fine.
in post.
Okay.
But like, what is the biggest gig that you've had number wise? And yeah, just like what was the amount for the biggest gig that you've had?
Like paid to me?
Paid to you from a single project.
A single project. Maybe maybe between 10 and 20 grand, I would say. Something around there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Are you able to, you don't have to say the name of the brand, but is there like a specific project you have in mind for that project you had that was in that budget range?
Yeah. Probably won't say the name of it.
Even
that's
calling
fine.
out the deliverables or even like the project itself, like was it a multi-day? Was it like, wow, I can't believe that I only had to create this for that, but it's cool to see how my value was reflected in price.
It's funny, like the highest paid job is usually because I get to wear multiple hats. Like if I'm on a job, like currently I'm on a job for Scott's like Miracle Grow, and I'm producing, and so like I'm billing for like the days that I'm just producing, but then there's a whole post-production team that carries it. So like, but I'm not part of it. So like I'm only billing for that part of the project. So when you're able to like extend your reach to both, then like it's a nice paycheck,
For sure.
So like that just means that I was shooting, but I also did tons of post, and like yeah, I feel like that's where you can double dip. That's why like yes, I edit, but it's not I don't like advertise it necessarily that like I'm an editor, but in those like intermediate cases, that's usually very beneficial because
Wow.
like when you get into that higher level where there's like 16,000 people on a set, like you're billing for one day, like even like a rate of a grip is like around $600 for the day for like a 10+1. So like, but if you're in a higher rank, or if you're also doing post, or if you've done production, you're like pre, then shoot days, then post. Like that's where you can
That's cool.
stretch the budget, or at least like
Yeah,
direct
so
it into your pocket.
then it's almost like wearing multiple hats will ultimately help you get more.
Yeah. But also at the same time, no, because if you wanted to do the movie thing and you keep editing and you're deterring from that goal of like DPing a movie, like you will get there one day. It's just you'll be 60, like look at all the union
No, you're right.
DPs.
Yeah.
Like it takes time, and there's like a huge amount of respect I have for that, where it's like you're veterans, so much, like there's so much experience that you need to control like those large scale scope projects. So it's a mix. It's like I'm the intermediate level right now feels good because I can flex, like I can do certain things that I would never even attempt to do on like a bigger scale scope, because there's systems in place from the agency side or client side that's it doesn't fall into our scope.
That's super interesting because we have a lot of listeners that are freelance photographers and videographers. And it almost reminds me of people that they're hybrid shooters. So it's like,
Totally.
they got a client that they're doing like maybe stills for, but also they're doing video for and editing for in order to get that desired budget. So I don't think what you're saying is like not happening, but it's cool to hear it from someone who's a cinematographer, producer, editor, and also you're in Toronto. And I think depending on where people are listening to this episode, sometimes you got to wear more hats than hats you're wearing. Sometimes you can get a bigger budget, maybe just wearing one hat. It really depends on experience, where you live, the type of clientele you're going after.
Yep. And how to delegate. like if I didn't want to do post-production, I could still take some sort of producer role so that I can manage client expectations with with the editor. So there's ways to do it. If you don't have the actual skill set, it's just like leveraging the people around you who do.
Yeah.
And then communicating that with
That's
the
really
client.
good.
Yeah.
I like that you said there's a bit of you're in a good spot right now. You're kind of in that freelancer middle. You don't really have desire to be working on massive budgets because there's a lot more moving parts, a lot more logistics. And I feel like that's not talked about enough, because I feel the same way. There have been times where I've been on like a bigger project and I'm like, ooh, like the money's good, but I don't like this at all, because you're giving it up. You're giving up a lot more of like your mental space and time in different area. So when you actually because like you said, when you're first starting out in freelancing, you think of money very in like an hourly sense. So like, okay, cool. I work 5 hours and I get paid $500. That's $100 an hour. That's freaking awesome. I'm making 30 right now on my day job or like at my whatever job. Then you start to realize that you're somewhere for 5 hours, and then that 500 becomes less and less valuable, because you're like, what are you doing within those 5 hours? And then so that's why I realized, hearing your thing too, is like there's a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot of price of like what you're making and then the amount of work that you're putting in.
Yeah.
You found that sweet spot. What would you say is like, if you could live at this budget amount for each of your projects, I'd be happy. You'd be like a happy camper. Like if you get this amount for every budget, like every project, you'd be good.
Going to me.
Yeah, going to you.
Sky's the limit.
Hey, we already talked about she has no
but
ceiling.
I mean,
no
I'm
cap.
saying like in this current, I guess like current level you're at, like you want it.
Like what's your get out of bed? What's your get out of bed price? Like what's like you're starting at, if you will?
Like you wouldn't even bat an eye at a project that's this low of a budget, or like you have like a get out of bed price. Yeah.
Like if I didn't want to do the project and I had to get out of bed for it, like I would take like $3,000. Like that'd be fine.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to do it, like my rate goes down, because I
Gotcha.
want like
For sure.
you
That's
want to
super
bid
good,
against other people. But yeah.
I got a question to follow up on that. you know,
Maybe that number was too high.
no, that's good.
Comment down below. if
I like
it's too
that.
high.
Hey, comment down below. Is Nicole taxing out here or not?
There's so many different pricing strategies. I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are, or what you go with when it comes to like hourly versus value based versus like fixed day rate with overtime, whatever. Like, how do you typically do it? And also, do you think it's something that most people in your circle are also focused on when it comes to pricing strategies?
It's usually per day. Like,
Okay.
I think it's per day. Right now, like, for me to come out and be a cinematographer for the day, 10 hours, like 1,500. That's usually my, like, a classic, that's what it is.
Pretty
And
standard, yeah.
Pretty standard. And if there's prep involved, then, you know, it's like half day rates for preps, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's kind of, I don't know, structure-wise, it's usually day.
Obviously, like the more days you're on set, then it's like the more money you can make.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of charging it by day.
Yep. And if the scope allows for it, like if there's a lot of prep to do, then you can charge for those. And I think for producers, it's usually between like 10 or 12% of the entire budget that you would be billing for.
Okay.
So if you know the budget's like, yeah, 100K,
That makes sense.
then you're getting about 10. And it makes sense in the producer sense, because if you have a bigger budget, you're
There's more
usually
work.
managing more people, there's more budget to manage, so like it's, yeah, your responsibilities are greater when you have bigger budget. So yeah,
That's
you
really
should
good.
get paid more for that, right? Instead of doing a day rate, it's like, okay, what's the scope? Now let me just take, yeah, a percentage of that.
Yeah.
I like that. You should charge like your rate should increase based off the workload and not have. That's why it's like it's so tough, because like when I hear day rate, sometimes there's like, what if there's a lot of prep? But now I'm hearing that there's prep, you know, there's prep, and that's really valuable. Like, I think there are a lot of creative freelancers out there who are not charging for the prep. They're just viewing like the day of shoot, and they could be like pulling together locations, pulling together talent, or pre-production essentially, right? And they're doing all this stuff and don't charge for that.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you're doing a ton of prep, like a week worth of prep, and then you have like 1 day of work and the client is trying to pay you for that 1 day of work, this is your sign to start thinking about how you can up your rate with the prep side.
And explaining it on the call too.
Yeah.
Like, listen, like this, I'm presenting it, like I'm going to create this whole storyboard for you. I'm managing like the location, like just explaining, and not like, I find a lot of times, because video is in a relative term new for businesses, they don't know like what is right or wrong. And it's just about like kindly educating, like, hey, I'm working all of these days up to our shoot and also doing post, or not, but it's like, it's
That's
just, you know, it's just managing expectations, but also, again, proof of concept, like showing them these are the storyboards that I've made for previous projects, or like how I'm managing this project and the time that it's going to actually take, just to say like, this is the value you're actually getting, and not just being like, yeah, this is my prep day, and you're just chilling on your phone, like,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, it's
Dang it, my plan is ruined.
I want to challenge you for a second. Let's say there's two different clients here. One is a high school hockey team. One is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They both want the same 45-second video cut, like shot, edited. Both are like full day shoots. Do you charge the same? Same usage, same licensing? Do you charge the same? And then also, are you charging for editing days, like outside of the shoot? And what does that look like? Or is it all baked into your rate?
No, everything is like based
Broken
off
down.
like line items.
Okay.
Yeah, like I use QuickBooks all the time, so
Come on.
I'll break down.
I'm a QuickBooks guy.
Yeah, QuickBooks is great. I've used it ever since I started, so I've like upgraded from like the easy start to like you know, like
Free
hold up.
plan to like ultimate pro
to ultimate
plan.
pro.
We're going to make a deal right now. If QuickBooks sponsors MIDCONVO, they're going to sponsor you as well. That's crazy.
Shout out QuickBooks. Honestly, it's great because, yeah, you can break down every single role, even if I'm producing on more of an intermediate scale, because I'll have like full Excel sheets for bigger, like for the Scots one, and have everything broken down from like our estimated and then our actuals and all of that. But which you can buy on my storefront.
Hey,
Hey,
we're
go
going to
check
plug
it
the
out.
store.
Plug it.
So what would you charge the same with hockey team
Yes. So
versus Toronto Maple Leafs?
I wouldn't charge the same on paper, but what I could do is leverage brands to then sponsor the high school one. So, and if I wanted to do something new or something fun, like if I wanted to, I don't know, do some like drone stuff in the rink or like, I don't know, something funky with them, with the Leafs, it's usually controlled, or like, you know, any professional sport team, there's really no creative freedom. It's like, here's the pitch, like just execute on it. So it's like, okay, great. Here's the rate that you want me to execute on. If these people don't have the budget, but absolutely, like, you're definitely not going to charge the same. But for me to say to a brand, hey, I'm doing this really cool, like pulling your heartstrings high school hockey video for this team. I don't know. Like, I don't know if it would be like a Tim Hortons or like something, right? That's like in that like
You might put together a treatment and pitch it to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's cool.
So like leveraging, and it's totally up to you if you do that. I would just say, if you have a good story and you have ice time, let's shoot.
Yeah.
Like, that's a spec right there. Like,
so,
you know,
I like that.
Especially if, I like that you said hockey though, because this is like, even, I mean, I'm in Toronto, so hockey is a big thing, but it's like shooting on a rink in itself is a whole different checklist. You need mats, you need spikes for your shoes, you need to make sure your cables aren't touching the ice because they'll melt. Like, it's like all of these different things that if you were to just show up on a rink and shoot without any prior experience, you're cooked. Yeah.
All right. So I need an answer. Do you charge the same if all things are the same as far as scope, deliverables, right? Because we were talking about how you price things out, and you said kind of like by day.
Yeah.
So would you charge the hockey team, sponsors aside,
right?
Would you charge them the same, or would you charge the Maple Leafs more because of the name?
Yeah, you couldn't charge them the same. There's no way. I don't know. It's a mix, because it's like, like I said, if I have creative control, then I'm more than happy to take whatever rate I was gonna quote them with and give it to like an experienced gaffer, an experienced director or something, so that I can take the opportunity to learn, right? If they have a good story, they have ice time, like, great, like, let's leverage it.
Yeah.
And with the Leafs or with any other professional team, usually there's like a treatment and it's already planned out. It's just like, here, execute it. I know that you're reliable. You can do, I've seen your work before, whatever, and you can execute on it. So it's less like there's not, they can't leverage me in terms of budget, because they know what they want. And it's like, you're ordering off a menu,
That's
you know,
good.
versus the hockey, like the high school hockey team, of course they don't have the same budget. So it's just, you're pitching to a fully different clientele.
That's fair.
So
I think on the flip side, though, it shows that you'll stick to your guns regardless. Because let's be honest, there's some people, especially in Miami, where they hear a big name and they're like, oh, I'm in. I don't care about the price, I'm in. And it's like, hold up. Like, bro, you're telling me you're going to do it for like $500 when most people would probably charge like $1,500 or $2,000. So it's cool to hear that you're like, exposure aside, I'd probably charge them more.
Yeah.
Like, when people ask for your day rate, is there ever a world in your industry where you're like, what's your budget?
Oh, all the time.
Right? Because I'm sure the day rate fluctuates, right? Like, when a brand approaches you, let's say they say, okay, here's this project, here's the scope. Instead of you being like, hey, cool, here's my day rate, do you just first ask like, hey, what's the cinematographer budget? What's the DP budget? Like, do you ask the budget first?
Yeah, usually on my website, I try not to put my actual email anywhere. I like force everyone to just fill out the form on my website, and it's like the required field is ideal budget. Like, you have to give me a number.
Yeah, it's like required.
It's required. So even sometimes they even still put like NA, and I'm like, oh.
That happens to me too. Or they'll put like, I gotta take it off. There's like a $0 to $100 range, and they'll just put like the $0 to $100. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, it's not helping anyone. So it's usually, if they don't know a budget, it automatically, sometimes that's a red flag, because it's like, you either don't have a marketing team that knows numbers, that like can actually give you, okay, this project, we only have this amount, this chunk, versus like a smaller company where they're like, I've never done this before, I don't know what to do. So in that case, it's more of like, do I have time to educate this person? Do I really want, like, not in like a egotistic way.
It's like, do I just shoot an email, or do we hop on a discovery call?
Yeah. Or do I even do I just say, hey, would love to like forward you to someone else who might be like more junior or something, where like it really depends on my schedule. If I'm slammed, like, I won't even probably like reply until I'm ready to like manage and like explain and properly educate people. But yeah, if I'm chilling, which a lot of the times I am, like between last year was crazy. Between like November and March, I was like, what am I doing with my life? And then like March till like it's just like day after day
Crazy.
after. So
Wow.
the
It'd
ebb
be
and
like
flow
that.
is wild. Yeah.
Wow.
It is so crazy. But when I'm slower, that's when I would entertain those and say, yeah, like let's see
That's
what
cool.
we can do. So yeah.
That's awesome.
That's sweet. Well, we can wrap up the episode here. I feel like we covered a lot of good topics. What comes to mind for me is really just you talking about pivoting out of like specific field and then turning that new pivot into a passion or into a profit. And then also I feel like you touched a lot about on the importance of portfolio and why you need to be passionate about what you do. Spec work is obviously huge. It has been huge for you. So a lot of good stuff in this episode.
For sure. Thank you so much. I
Thank
think
you.
a lot of people are inspired by hearing other people's marathon of freelancing and being an entrepreneur. And I think at the end of the day, it's like your passion definitely shows in this episode. And I appreciate for you going and being transparent about all things.
Yeah. Where can people find you online?
Yeah,
Where would
come
you like
on.
to send people?
The new website. Let's go.
The new website, ntraps.com, ntraps on Instagram, ntraps.prod on TikTok, because I didn't put the
Hey.
ntraps on TikTok. And then, yeah, just Nicole Shapiro on YouTube. Yeah, I'm everywhere.
We'll
Try to
tag
be.
it. We'll tag it in the description or in the comment section. It's so funny when now we ask people that because there's so many freaking platforms. There's like, yeah, M-Sham's here, M-Sham's here. Hold on, there's just like 5 more. Hold on, give me a second.
Dude, I think
Threads,
a
Twitter.
year and a half ago, I'm like, yo, check us out on Clubhouse. So right.
Hey,
I love Clubhouse.
RIP
Yep.
Clubhouse, bro. That they had like a good
They're
1
all
month
back.
run.
Yep. Those
Now
were
it's
great
Threads.
conversations, though, Clubhouse. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thanks for listeners. And we'll see you next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Peace.